Hey there, readers, writers, and friends. Story Serpent here, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We're talking about author illustrator Gareth Hinds. He has done a great number of beautifully illustrated graphic novels, and we are going to talk about each and every one of the ones I have personally experienced and why you should be introducing these to your teenagers, particularly. But before we get into all that, today's random words are like, share, subscribe, symmetrical. Gareth tends to work in a couple of different types or categories, shall we say. The first are the classics. Gareth has gone through, he's done the Iliad, the Odyssey, and Beowulf. Beowulf I have not seen, so I cannot speak to its content. But one of the things I love about the Iliad and the Odyssey, nope, gotta find it. There we go. One of the things I love about the Iliad and the Odyssey is that he has these pages where he's introducing you to all the characters. He's giving you a visual frame of reference, which, let's face it, when teens are learning the classics, it's one of the hardest parts, is keeping all of the different characters straight. Who's who? Who's talking now? What are they doing? I also love that he depicts the gods and goddesses in kind of this monochromatic style so that you can tell when a deity is present and doing stuff versus when real life people are present doing things. The other thing that I think this realizes, and that Gareth is particularly good at, is that certain things were meant to be experienced visually. They were meant to be plays. They were our modern equivalent of movies and television. And so if you're not seeing the interaction that's going on, it can often be very difficult to picture or to get the meaning of the language, especially for modern kids who, let's face it, have not been exposed to nearly enough classical language to even understand what's going on here, let alone see how can this apply to me? What are some of the constants in human behavior and psychology across time? So if you have a teen who is reading either the Iliad, the Odyssey, or Beowulf, and they are struggling, Gareth Hinds' graphic novel versions are going to be a great way to help them out. Gareth also likes to do Shakespeare. He's done Romeo and Juliet, King Lear, and my personal favorite play, The Merchant of Venice. Now you can see, just in terms of thickness here, one's a little bigger than the other. But that's because so much of what Shakespeare is doing happens visually. It happens on the stage rather than on the page. One of the other things I love about Gareth and the way he tends to depict things, yes, there are movie versions of The Merchant of Venice. One of the more well-known ones features Al Pacino. It also features a brothel with naked women in it. Why? 'Cause Hollywood and can. But if I want to try and help my 14 or 15-year-old understand Shakespeare in the visual medium that is going to help them understand the interactions between the characters the best, I really don't want to have to fast forward through the one scene that's got all the tits in it. This is an excellent solution to that. While I will say he has a very spare minimalist style in The Merchant of Venice particularly, that's not my favorite. It's not as colorful. It's absolutely going to do the trick. And it's going to help your kids visualize what's going on in the language. So if King Lear, Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice are on your kids' reading list this year, maybe consider picking up the graphic novel to go with it. He's also done more modern classics like this collection of Edgar Allan Poe's stories and poems. He's got the Cask of Amontillado, which is often studied in classrooms. There's I and My Annabelle, which is of course like the gut-wrenching romantic classic that everyone's fairly certain Poe wrote for his departed wife. I loved the illustrations that went in here because, again, he manages to depict the horror and the gravity of what Poe is talking about, but he does it in a way that is not as graphic as it could be. I also appreciate that with each and every one of the stories and poems in here, he includes a little trigger warning at the beginning. This particular piece includes graphic horror, body horror, dread, guilt, murder, whatever is going into that piece, he's going to let you know ahead of time so that you, as a parent, can make choices about which ones you want your teen to read, or they can make the decision that this is not for me. And I really appreciate that. And then this is the one where I kind of became aware of him. I had actually purchased the Odyssey and the Iliad for my girls because they were studying them in class, not realizing it was the same author illustrator. Until I picked up this copy of Graceling, except I picked up the library's copy at the time, held it for way too long, and ended up owing them a great deal of money. But I gave it back. And went ahead and purchased my own copy because I decided that I actually appreciated his visual depiction of Kristen Keshore's book better than the original book. There are parts of Graceling that get pretty spicy. Whatever your personal preferences, beliefs, standards are around levels of spice in a book, the way he does the cutaway is really tasteful. Implies what's happening without your kid having to read what is happening, which is the case in Keshore's book. I love that for, especially as you're introducing, maybe you've got a 14 or 15-year-old girl who's getting really into fantasy. I would hand her the graphic novel before I handed her the actual novel. Now, whether that's going to make her want to go read the rest of the books and whether or not you think those books are appropriate for her, that's a whole different conversation. But the way Gareth Hinds handles it is very tasteful and much appreciated. So that's my little reader roundup of Gareth Hinds and all of the goodness you can expect from him as an author illustrator. I really hope we see more from him in the future. I would love for him to do more Shakespeare. Like, Hamlet, man, come on, do it. But we'll see what comes in the future. Until next time, read on, write on, stay sharp.